Hi there, I'm going to show you how you can create a bound pocket like the one that I've got on my jacket here. So it could be a technique you use on a jacket on the outside, or I've made another one on the inside as well. So the bound pocket is a type of slashed pocket where you slash into the fabric and create the pocket into that hole that you've made. Sometimes it's referred to as a jetted pocket, a double welt pocket, or a besom pocket, depending on what book you're reading or which country you're in. So the technique I'm going to show is where you've got these two lips or either side of the pocket with the pocket inside. So to create your sample, you're going to end up with something like this at the end, where you've got this opening here and then the pocket inside, and it will look like this on the wrong side. So you'll need to cut out the welts, and they are 13 centimetres by 2.5 centimetres wide. You can make, for your own pocket, if you're putting this into a garment and you want to add a pocket, you can obviously make them as wide or as long as you want to. But for this sample, this is the sizing we'll go for. So 2 welts that are 13 by 2.5. 1 pocket piece, which is 13 wide by 25 long. So that needs to be the width of the welts. And then the garment piece that the pocket's going to go into, and for this sample we'll cut one that's 24 centimetres by 18 centimetres. So I've used like contrasting fabrics here to make it a bit more interesting. If you're using a lightweight fabric here, or lightweight fabric for your welts, and if I was constructing an actual garment, what I would do is use interfacing and interface the wrong side of each of the welts, and I would also interface where on the garment piece where the pocket's going to go. So on the jacket that I showed you, actually the entire front of the pocket of the jacket had been interfaced, so that makes the fabric nice and rigid and sturdy for you to be able to put the bound pocket into. If the fabric's very flimsy, then it can be very difficult to make sure that the pressing is nice and crisp and the pocket sits flat and well. I've omitted putting in any of the interfacing for my sample just to save time and for ease, but you may find, depending on your chosen fabrics, that actually adding the interfacing will make this easier for you. Make sure you've chosen a lightish weight fabric for the pocket piece, otherwise that's going to be too bulky on the inside of a garment. So the first stage is to take each of your welts and to fold these in half exactly down the centre and to press them in half. So fold them in half, making sure you've folded each one really accurately and centrally, and then press them. Make sure that you've really got a nice crisp and well pressed finish. Now, if you were making a garment, you would have marked where the pocket is going to go on the garment. For the purpose of this sample, you can do it by eye. So, welt pieces have been pressed. I shall take my garment piece and I'm going to position the pocket kind of near the top edge, maybe about like 3/4 of the way, I guess. So about here, so then there's space enough for the pocket section to fit in here. So I take my welt pieces and I'm going to position them so that they face one another and so that they are equidistant from the edge there. So I want to put them in the centre and about there or slightly lower down on the fabric. And I've got so that the folded edges are on the outsides and the raw edges are the ones which are meeting in the middle. And then they can be pinned in place. And make sure when you're pinning them, you pin them straight. You may want to draw a line across your fabric so that you've got a line on which to follow and which to match your welts to. Once those are pinned in place, you're then going to machine stitch from this edge here, measure in 1.5 centimetres and start your stitching 1.5 centimetres in from this edge, and you're going to stitch centrally across the middle of each of the welts 1.5 centimetres in from the edge. So this is the one that I've stitched, so I've stitched absolutely centrally down there, and I did chalk a line first so that I got a line to follow, and I'm about 1.5 centimetres in from the edge, and both of these lines are absolutely parallel, totally centered down the welt, and they end in exactly the same place on each of the welts. That's really important. You don't want one to be longer than the other, so you want them to be exactly the same. Once you've done that, what you're going to do next is to cut a hole. So this is the kind of scary bit. So what you're going to do is to use an unpicker or a sharp pair of scissors, short scissors, to get you started. And in the centre here, I'm going to make a hole, and then I'm going to cut. You can see I've done it already. Cut all the way to about 1.5 centimetres from so about 1.5 centimetres from where the end of the line is. So it's about 2 to 3 centimetres in from this edge here. So I cut all the way along to there, and then when I get to that point, I'm going to cut in to make a V. So you can see I've got a V there, and if I turn that over, you can see a bit more clearly the shape that I've got. So I'm kind of cutting a Y in each end, and you might find it's easier to do it on the wrong side so that you can make sure that when you cut up to here, you want to be cutting right up to that stitch, not into the stitch, not beyond the stitch, but just right up to that stitch point. And that's why I said this is all about precision. You must do that exactly up to there. So either end is cut with a Y in that way. For the next stage, I'm going to turn one of the welts through the hole to the wrong side. So you can see now that how the pocket is going to start to be formed. And I can give that a press along there, and you should find that your welt is an regular width all the way along. If it's not, it's because you didn't stitch exactly down the middle. So having turned that one welt to the inside, if you flip that over, so I've got that piece of fabric showing there, what I'm going to do next is to take my pocket piece, and to match my pocket piece, so take my pocket piece, match that. I'm going to turn this around the other way. So match the pocket piece raw edge to the raw edge of the welt here. So I'm matching those raw edges together, and then you can pin the raw edge of the welt to the raw edge of the pocket piece. And I'm going to just fold that over so you can see that stitch line there. And actually you might find it easier to pin in place from this side. And I'm going to attach that pocket piece stitching exactly over that line of stitches, or stitching a millimetre away, so a tiny fraction away, towards the raw edge. What you don't want to do is end up stitching over to this side so that you're stitching through the nice welt that you've created, but I want to be stitching into this section of seam allowance here. So ideally, exactly starting from this edge, exactly over that stitch line, all the way along and to the end. So this is the one that I've already done, and you can see that I've stitched over that line of stitching all the way along exactly and all the way to the end. So from the other side you can see the stitch line on the spotty fabric where I've stitched all the way across. Once you've done that, we're then going to repeat the same thing for the other welt. So turning back to the right side, take the other welt piece, post that through the hole, like so, and at this point you're not worrying about these triangles that you've created in the fabric. Pull that nice and flat, and you can press that again from the right side so that you can see that second welt there, how that's going to sit, and then turn back to the inside and take the other raw edge of the pocket bag and match it to the welt that you've just turned to the inside. So again, I'm going to flip this over so that you can see from the other side, and then I'm going to pin this in place and stitch as I did before, stitching right from the edge here across this bit, across exactly along the line of stitching that's already there and all the way to the end. So you can pin that in place to make sure it isn't going to move, and then stitch exactly along that stitch line all the way to the end. So this is the one that I've already done. So both ends of the pocket are now stitched in place. So that side's done and that side's done. And then what's left now is to finish either side of your pocket, and we're nearly done. So what I need to do is to make sure that these triangle parts really help to form the sides of the pocket. So I want to flip that triangle bit to the inside, make sure that one's flipped to the inside as well, and then from the right side fold that back so that you can see the triangle, and then you're going to machine stitch 1.5 cm in, or whatever that distance was that you stitched initially when you first stitched the welts on, and stitch from the top all the way to the bottom of the pocket. And then on the other side, so looking at it from the right side, folding back the garment edge, getting that triangle out in place, making sure that it's fully out, and stitching again 1.5 cm in, or whatever distance that is, to get that in the right place, starting from the top and stitching down the side of your pocket. Once you've stitched, you can then also overlock. So this is my pocket that I've already sewn. So with that folded back to the inside, I've stitched from the top all the way to the bottom on that side, and then on the other side, folding that back, I've stitched from the top all the way to the bottom on that side, and then I've just overlocked that edge, and that's my pocket finish. So from the right side you've got the two welts that should meet in the middle. I've got a nice square opening, or rather a rectangular opening here, and on the back you've got your pocket piece which has been overlocked along there, and I've also overlocked this edge here too. Usually this type of pocket would go into something that's lined like a jacket, but it could be used on the back of trousers, so you probably would want to be doing some kind of edge finishing all the way around. So there we go, bound pocket complete.